Well, good morning. Welcome again to Hickory Ridge. My name is Justin Senesi. I'm the pastor here, and it is great to be up with you all again. For the last month, my wife Jamie and I have been downstairs teaching kids' church, and it was a joy. I'm telling you what, if you lack joy in your life, get in a position where you can be with kids. It's infectious. They have a joy. I know sometimes as we get older, I've got a grandson now. As we get older, these kids, so much energy. Why don't they just calm down? Energy's wasted. Listen to me. Let that infect you and come alive in you. Some of us need a booster shot of kid. I mean, it'll just bring you alive. It'll bring joy into your life. So we had a great time down there. Of course, during the month of February, Pastor Andy Salino did a series called Transformed, How to Win in Your Thought Life. And he did a fantastic job, didn't he? It was, I don't know where he's in the back, but he did a fantastic job. And so appreciate knowing that I can be downstairs for a month and not worry. He did a great job. But we're starting a new series called Break the Cycle. Break the Cycle. So I want to kind of paint a picture for you. Maybe you've seen this in your own life or in the life of someone you know. But have you ever seen where somebody seems to make bad financial choice after bad financial choice until everything just seems to be spiraling out of control? And it may not be an issue of intellect. It may not be that they're dumb or that they don't understand math. They just can't seem to make a good financial choice. And what happens most of the time is we stand on the sideline and we say, you need a plan. That's what you need. You need a plan. You need a budget. You need to be disciplined. You need to work out this budget, stay within this budget, stay within this plan, and then you won't have these financial problems. Now, please hear me. I'm not saying that's wrong. You should have a budget. You should have a plan. You should work within that plan. But I've seen people that do all that. They go through all the financial teachings that are out there. They sit down, they have a plan, they have the understanding of what that means, and yet still, even in that, and maybe you've seen it in your own life, you still seem to walk right back to making bad financial choice after bad financial choice, and it's this cycle that keeps going on. Because the issue sometimes is not what we see at the surface. You just need a budget. It's often something much deeper that drives us to consume, that drives us to build massive amounts of debt, that drives us with a spirit of fear, that drives us to just think that we'll never have enough. So this series is not going to be a series about how to become debt-free. It's going to be talking about how to live free from debt. And there's a difference. It's not going to be a series about how to accumulate wealth. It's going to be a series about how to be free from consuming everything that comes into your hands. It's not going to be a series about how to gain financial independence. It is going to be a series that says, I can be free from the spirit of fear. But if in this series you take those things and you find that freedom, you will begin to be free from debt. You will begin to gain wealth. You will begin to have more resources available. But it's not really that. You're going to hear a whole lot more about freedom than you are about finances in this series, because it's about the underlying things that motivate us, that push us, that propel us to get to these points in our life where we just keep repeating this cycle over and over and over. So this morning we're going to start with the idea of debt. Who's ever heard this about America, the land of the free? America is the land of the free. If you've heard that, raise your hand. Okay. Some of you are lying in church. We've all heard that. You've all heard that. America, the land of the free. But we're not. We are the land in bondage to debt. Do you know the U.S. federal government, every day, the best statistics I could find, every day accumulates an additional $2.7 billion of debt. $2.7 billion. I can't fathom that. Every day. Just keep it going. You say, well, I would never do that. You might not get $2.7 billion of debt, but do you know the average American household has $38,000 of consumer debt, not counting mortgages, consumer debt, credit card, auto, all those kind of things, $38,000. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. I don't have $38,000. I've got about zero, or I've got $5,000 of debt. Well, then just look to the person next to you. What you don't have, tack onto them. Okay? So you've got 10, that means you get to add 28,000 to the person next to you. People are just out of control with debt. And what happens is, as you live in debt, you're not free. You're bound to that debt. And I want you to learn, how do I live free from debt? But here's the thing. Getting free from debt, becoming debt-free, that takes time. It takes a plan. It takes consistency. It takes determination. It takes being self-disciplined. Becoming debt-free takes time. But learning to be free from debt can happen today. And throughout this series, this is what we're going to keep looking back at. Financial freedom takes time. It takes time, but freedom from finances can happen immediately. Jesus talks about this all the time, that you can be motivated, led by, enslaved to money, things, possessions, or you can be free from that. So financial freedom, financial independence, getting to the point where you don't have debt and you don't have and you have savings, all that takes time. Dave Ramsey has great plans on that. Other people have great plans. You can do that. I believe you can do that. I hope you do that. But financial freedom, freedom from finances, those things deep inside of us that motivate us to just consume more, spend more, accumulate more debt, you can be free of that immediately. So this morning when we talk about debt, please hear me. I am not saying all debt is bad. You should have no debt. Everyone should be debt-free. I know people who believe that. I'm not saying it's wrong. That's just not what I'm going to be talking about this morning. I do believe most of us at $38,000 per household carry too much consumer debt. And so we need to rein some of that in. But that's not what this is about. This is about what is it that pushes me, that is underneath the surface of my life, that I feel compelled. It's just this compulsion day after day to accumulate more and more debt. What is it that drives us to debt? What is it inside of us? What is it inside of me that sometimes I have to battle with, that says, why do I keep spending more than I have? So there's a man in the Bible, one of the richest men in biblical history, and if you converted his wealth to today's standards, he would probably be right up there with the richest men in the world, worth billions, $100 of billion probably. He had more wealth than we could fathom. And his name was Solomon. He was the son of King David, so his father dies, and he was the heir, and he took over the kingdom of Israel, and he was wealthy. He wrote a book. He wrote a couple of books. He wrote the Proverbs. He wrote the Song of Solomon, but he also wrote one called Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes is a strange book. It's hard to sometimes understand because it seems like it's all negative and critical. What's the point of life? What's the point of this? What's the point of that? So you got to read the whole book, and at the end it explains that the whole point is to surrender your life and live for God. But at the beginning, he talks about accumulating stuff. Now, he didn't accumulate debt because he had wealth. Most of us accumulate stuff, and in the accumulating of stuff, since we don't have a lot of wealth, we accumulate debt as a result. And here's what he says in the second chapter. I did not restrain myself from getting whatever I wanted. I did not deny myself anything that would bring me pleasure. That's you. If you don't restrain yourself and you don't deny yourself, you'll find yourself with thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of debt. And that's, I think, what a lot of us end up with. Because we don't deny ourselves. We don't restrain ourselves. We just spend and spend and spend. And then Solomon, throughout the rest of Ecclesiastes, begins to talk about how negative living like that is. Living a life that says, I don't deny myself, I don't restrain myself, how almost empty it is. It's a book of wisdom. So we need to learn from the wisdom of this man. So what is it that drives us to wealth? There's a few things that he points out to us. The first thing that drives us to debt, and he points out to us, the first thing is this: the more you have, the more you want. The more you have, the more you want. So here's how Solomon puts it. He says, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves money never has enough. So what drives us to accumulate more and more debt is that we want more and more stuff. We want more. Do you know that the average American household income, of the entire household. Again, the best I could figure, you might find different statistics, but the best I could research on the internet was it stands at $61,000 a year. Highest in history. Highest in history, $61,000 a year. And yet we keep accumulating more and more and more debt. We're richer than we've ever been, but in a sense we've got more debt than we've ever had, so we are actually poor as a result. So we're just never satisfied. Who's had this experience? Maybe when you started out in your life, marriage, work career, and you start out and you get a job and you're excited for it and you're earning, now I'm not talking about your first job maybe in high school, maybe it was, but you're earning, say, $25,000, $30,000 a year. And you're doing okay. And then somebody says, what would you do if you were making, say you were making $25,000 a year? Somebody said, what would you do if you were making $35,000 a year, $10,000? You say, I'd never have a problem in my life. If I was making $35,000, I would have money to give away. I wouldn't know what to do with it all. Now fast forward 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and now you're making $50,000 a year. And you think, if I was just making that $61,000 that Justin just mentioned, my life, the more we have, the more we want. I understand inflation. I understand the cost of living goes up. I understand all those things. But underneath all that is this insatiable desire for more. So that's what Solomon says. Whoever loves money, whoever is driven to accumulate more will never have enough. And that's what drives us to debt. We're never satisfied. Which leads us to the next thing. The more you have, the less you're satisfied. The more you have, the less you're satisfied. Now, here's how Solomon puts it. He says, how meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. How meaningless. So what happens is we accumulate stuff and we think, if I just get this, I'll be satisfied. But here's what I've learned. That momentary euphoria that you might feel when you get that new thing, you sit in that new car, you hold that new gizmo or gadget, whatever it is, there is a rush. Endorphin, they've done studies, endorphins are released. You feel something, but it doesn't last. It is like a drug high. And so what happens is, now after 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 minutes, 6 seconds, whatever it is, you need to go out and get something else to get that rush. And we're never satisfied. We always want more because we think it'll satisfy us, but it doesn't, because we want the latest and the greatest, the newest and the best. I don't know if you saw this story, but there was a man in China who was actually a teenager in 2011. I think he was about 18, 19 years old. In 2011, he went to the black market in China. He was a Chinese national. He found the black market and sold one of his kidneys. So he can get enough money in 2011 to buy a brand new iPad and iPhone. And he was satisfied. Fast forward 7 years, almost 8 years now. It was done in a back alley. It wasn't done properly. He's now laid up in bed, bedridden with organ failure. I don't think he's satisfied. I don't think he's sitting there going, that was a good trade. That was a good trade. We always want more, and here's the problem. Even if he wasn't laid up in bed with organ failure, he sold one of his kidneys for a 2011 iPhone and iPad that are now antiquated and nobody wants, and nobody's envious of him, and nobody says, man, you've got that, and I don't. They're saying, I got 2 kidneys, and you don't. But we're never satisfied. We always want more. The next thing is this that drives us to debt. The more you have, the more others ask. Listen, you know this if you're a parent, right? The more kids you have, the more they ask, because they got more hands to put out. But the more, Dad closed the deal. Hey, Dad, can we go here? Mom made the sale. Mom, can we get this? They're always asking for more. They're kids. Now you got to train them. You got to teach them. I'm going to do a whole series on parenting later on this year. But that's in the heart of a child. The problem is, as adults, it doesn't change. Do you ever hear these stories about these folks that win the lottery? They win like 50, 75 million, $100 million, and they're miserable because they've got relatives they never knew they had, and they come like just ants to honey. I mean, they just show up. Oh, can I have? Give. There's a reason billionaires don't put their phone number out on the internet, because everybody would be asking. And the more you have, the more people ask, and the more they think it's not that big of a deal. Listen, somebody comes to me and asks me for $100, that's a big ask. I don't know if I can afford to give you $100. Somebody goes to the head of Amazon and asks him for $1 million. I'm not going to ask that guy for $100. He can blow his nose on a $100 bill. I'm asking him for $1 million. The more you have, the more people ask, and the higher amount they ask for. So what happens is it drives us to debt because we say people are asking us for more. So therefore, I have to get more so I can make sure that I have what I need in case I need to give it to somebody else. So we just keep accumulating more and more debt. Here's how Solomon puts it. The more you have, the more people come to help you spend it. You ever hear about these athletes sign these $1 million contracts, and by the time they're done, 5, 6, 10 years after their playing career is done, they're bankrupt? That's why. They think the train of finances will never end, and when their skills are diminished and nobody's paying them endorsement fees anymore, their friends are still saying, let me help you spend your money. And then they don't have any more money or friends, and it's a sad thing. Next thing is this. The more you have, the more you will lose. The more you have, the more you will lose. Here's how Solomon puts it. What good is wealth, except perhaps to watch it slip through your fingers? Watch it slip through your fingers. The more you have, the more you will lose. Here's the thing. When you have wealth, right, you think, well, I don't want to lose it. Well, if you've got say you take, for some of you this is a lot of money, for some it's not, but say you take $1,000 and you buy stock. You buy stock and the stock crashes. You've lost $1,000. You may say, I didn't want to lose $1,000, but my life isn't over. I can recover from that. But if you have $10 million and you invest it in the stock and it goes away, now you may say, ooh, the more you risk losing. You say, well, I don't do that. I don't play the stock market. It's a gamble. I keep everything in safe securities. They won't diminish. They're slow earning, but I will never lose it. I've got news for you. There's two realities that you need to remember. One is taxes. The more you make, the more they take. So you'll lose more. The second reality, and it's even more true, is this: death. When you die, you lose it all. The more you have, the more you lose, because when you die, you don't take it with you. So that's just the truth. The more you have, the more you lose. And the last thing is this. The more you have, the more you worry. Solomon puts it like this. I love the way he words it. The rich seldom get a good night's sleep. The rich seldom get a good night's sleep because you worry. So here's how I would take that reality. And why does this drive us to more debt? Is because what happens is we worry that we won't have enough, so we leverage everything to get more. So here's something that you can write down. Worry increases in proportion to your portfolio. Worry increases in proportion to your portfolio. So think back to 2007, 2008, the Great Recession hits. If you were just starting out and saving for retirement, okay, and you saved, and say you had $1,000 saved, and all of a sudden the recession hits and you went overnight from having $1,000 in your IRA to $70 in your IRA, you're not going to freak out. You're going to say, well, I didn't want to lose $930, but okay. I've got time. I can recover. I can keep investing. Eventually it'll turn around. But let's say you were 2 months away from retiring and you had $1 million. And that's what you were going to live off of. And the recession hits. And overnight, you go from having $1 million to having $70,000. You are worried. You are not resting. You are not saying, no big deal. It'll turn around. You're freaking out. The bigger your portfolio, the more your worry increases. Now, I know some of you are saying millions of dollars, investments, retirement. I don't have any of that stuff. Okay, we live in Delaware. I get it. So let's take another scenario. Let me just make this real practical. You're going to the beach. It's the summer. You're going to the beach. You're there, and you don't have your wallet with you. Everything's safe in the car, but you had a $5 bill in your swimsuit, and you're there with your kids and your family, and they're digging sandcastles, and you decide it's hot. I want to go take a dip in the ocean. So you take that $5 bill out and you throw it on the towel. You take your hat, you put it on top of it. You throw your towel over top of the hat, and you go. And you're not really thinking a whole lot. What if somebody steals the $5 bill? You hope they don't, but you're not in the ocean just, oh my gosh, the $5. Because you're not, it's small. Now, same scenario, but you forgot that you had in your pocket a deposit that you needed to make, and it was $15,000 cash. You're not going in that ocean. You're sitting there, and unless there's 3 people you trust, and even then, you might not leave it. You're holding that, and you're saying, nope, the ocean ain't worth $15,000. The more you have, the more you worry. And so what happens is we worry, and so we accumulate greater amounts of debt in order to think that it will eliminate our worry, because now look how much I have. But you just worry more. So what is the antidote? How do we find freedom from what drives us to accumulate debt? The first thing is this: freedom from debt requires contentment. It requires contentment. I don't know about you, but contentment is not always an easy thing to find. But here's how Paul, writing to his spiritual son Timothy, puts it. He says, godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. Contentment. Are we ever content? Are you ever content? Am I ever content? I know I've talked to a lot of people who've had this experience, and maybe you have, and if you haven't, you may have to deal with this one day. But your parent dies. Maybe both of them at the same time. Maybe it's the second parent, and so now they've got a house full of stuff. And you need to go through that stuff. And they've accumulated all this over years, maybe a lifetime. They've got all this stuff, and you're going through it. And you're saying, why do they have this? Why did they need this? Because they weren't content. They needed more and more and greater. But are you and I any different? I need the newest. I need the best. Then Paul goes on and says this: but if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Who can say that verse in the Bible lights me up? That's a hard verse. If we have food and clothing, we'll be content with that. I think if we had to extrapolate that out to our day and age, we'd say, if we have a flip phone and a car, we should be content. But that's not me. Listen to me. I've got the Samsung Galaxy S9, and I can't wait for the S10. I'm just telling you, that's something I have to wrestle with. Am I content with that? I have to wrestle with that. I drive around in a 2002 GMC Envoy that we've put almost 200,000 miles on, and I have to say, you know what? When I drive up next to that sports car, can I be content? Can I learn to say, that's enough, it's fine, it gets me where I need to go? So sometimes I feel like I've learned contentment, and other times I wrestle with that sense of contentment. I think that's the case for all of us. That's part of the humanity of us. That's why Paul says we need to learn it. Contentment is of great gain. We've got to learn how to be content with those kind of things. If you can't learn contentment, you'll be driven time and time again to buy more and more and more. So the first thing you have to do, if you want to be free from debt, not debt-free, if you want to be free from the cycle that will lead you back to debt time and time again, you have to learn contentment. But the next thing is critical. Contentment is the foundation, but only with contentment, what you'll find is that you actually can be motivated out of a spirit of just wanting to get more. So the next thing is critically important. Freedom from debt requires generosity. Requires generosity. Generosity is the antithesis. It's the opposite of debt. The opposite of debt is not being debt-free. The opposite of debt is not being independently wealthy. The opposite of debt is not having a huge bank account. The opposite of debt is generosity. The reason is you can have a lot of money, and we're going to talk about this in 2 weeks, and operate from a spirit of fear. I don't have enough. I had $5, that's not enough. I need 5,000. 5,000 is not enough. I need 50,000. I need 100,000. I need 1,000,000. I need 5 million. I need more. You're not being generous. You're wealthy, but you actually are still in bondage. You might not be to debt, but you're in bondage. So the opposite of debt is generosity. Learning to say, I want to have more discretionary resources so I can give to more people. I don't want to be paying principal and interest every month, because if I'm doing that, then I can't help him. I can't help her. I can't be more generous to the church. I can't give to this organization. I'm not able to do those things I want to do because I'm bound to debt. So the opposite of debt is generosity. Learning to be generous. Learning to say, I want to give more regularly, more consistently, more faithfully. But I want you to understand something, and this is critically important. God does not want your money. I know that's what people say sometimes when it comes to the church. Well, pastors just want the money. God just wants money. God doesn't want your money. God wants your heart. God wants your heart, but he understands something that we forget. See, God knows us. Jesus and God incarnate knew how we were formed. And he knows that sometimes in order to get our heart, he has to get the things out of the way that stand between him and our heart. And there are things that stand in the way. It can be your relationships. It can be your work, your career, your position. But often one of the biggest things that stands between our hearts and God is our dollars, is our stuff, is our money. God says, I want your heart. In order to get your heart, you're going to have to give me your money. Here's how Jesus put it. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. God says, I want your heart. The problem is your treasure is standing between me and your heart. I want your heart, so I could take all your money away, and then there's nothing standing between me and you, but now you're broke. Or you could say, I will give it to God. God, I'll give it to you. And now it's not standing between me and you. Now I've given it to you, and with that comes my heart. See, we need to understand all God wants is your heart. God doesn't want your money. He wants your heart, but your money stands in the way. So we need to learn, how do I be generous? How do I give? How do I learn to say, this is not mine? Because like we said earlier, you're not taking it with you anyway. So learn to be generous. So how do we do that? What does generosity look like? It means this: give to bless, not to get. Give to bless, not to get. So often we get it backwards. Listen to me. I'm going to talk about this over the next 2 weeks. I believe in sowing and reaping. I believe when you give and you trust God that he'll be faithful and he will return to you in ways that we can't even understand. I believe all those things. But if your motivation is I'm giving to get, it becomes a cash on the barrelhead deal. God, I gave you $1,000. I expect $10,000 in the next 10 months. Now, I don't think that's what God wants. Give to be a blessing. Give to say, I get to do this. There's an excitement in being able to do this. Give to that neighbor. Give to that single mom. Give to that organization. Give to the church. You may not get anything from it, but give, because there's a blessing in giving. Jesus said this. It's recorded in the book of Acts. Paul's writing, or Luke is writing, and in the words of Paul, I have been a constant example of how you can help those in need by working hard. You should remember the words of the Lord Jesus. It's more blessed to give than to receive. Give to be a blessing. Now, I've said this before. I'll say it again. I believe this. People say, then what should I give to? What should I give? You say give. What should I give to? Give to what changes your heart and what moves your heart. Give to what changes your heart and what moves your heart. But I want to say this. Part of that ought to be the local church. The church you're a part of ought to be moving your heart in some way closer to God, transforming you in some way more and more into the image and likeness of Jesus. It ought to change you in some way. The local church you're a part of ought to change you and touch you and move you and transform you. If it's not, then maybe you need to find a church that does. Listen, I hope Hickory Ridge does that for everyone. But if you're saying maybe Hickory Ridge isn't your home church and you're saying the church down the road isn't, I'm not recruiting you to come to Hickory Ridge. I'm saying find a church that touches your heart and changes your heart, that somehow moves you closer and closer into the image and likeness of Jesus. Because if it's not doing that, then why are you there? You ought to get something out of being at the church. It ought to do something for you. But I also want to say this. Do not just be a part of a local church for what you can get, but for what you can give. Yes, you ought to get something. You ought to get, we have a great children's program. We have a wonderful student night on Wednesday nights. We have things for marriages and families. We want to see those things. I hope you get engaged in worship. I hope you get something from being here. We hear stories about people in connect groups and their lives are being transformed. You ought to get something. There ought to be some value in being part of a local church. You should get something. But don't be part of any local church just for what you get from it, but what you can give. And there are things you can give, whether it's financially, whether it's with your time, with your talents, with your resources. You should be finding something to give. Remember Jesus tells this parable, this story about a master who goes away. But before he goes away, he gives all his servants a set amount of money. It's called talents, but it's money. He's giving them financial resources, and he expects them to use it to make an impact, to expand, to make a greater investment with what they've been given, to make an impact with what they've been given. Some use it and double it. Some use it and make a difference, and then some just take it and bury it in the dirt. When you attend a church just for what you get and you don't give, now, I'm not just talking about serving. Now, I'm just being straight out. If you don't give financially, it's like taking those gifts and burying them in the dirt. Why wouldn't you give back? Why wouldn't you serve? Why wouldn't you use the resources that God's given you to help make an impact in that church? So the first thing is don't give to get, give to bless. The next thing is this: give with eternity, with a view of eternity. Give with a view of eternity. I think this is so hard for us as Americans. We're so used to now. Fast food, fast dining. I want it immediately. I want to stream the video. I don't want any delays. I want 2-day shipping. 1 day is better. And if I can go pick it up at Walmart through grocery pickup, that's even better. We want it instantaneous. But we have to learn that sometimes when we have to give with a view of the future. What's yet to come. So Jesus, talking to a person who had great wealth, said this to him: if you want to be perfect, go sell your possessions and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Give, and you will have treasure in heaven. That's hard. It means waiting. We don't want to wait for anything. So we accumulate debt. Then we want our debt to be eliminated immediately, right? I've accumulated all this debt. Now I want to get out of debt immediate. That doesn't happen. We want our lives fixed immediately. We want the world to be a better place immediately. We want all the problems solved now. But that's not life. In John chapter 14, Jesus is talking, and he says, I go and prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place, I will come back to take you with me, that we can be there together. See, we have to wait for a better place. It's coming, but we have to wait. In Hebrews 4, the writer of Hebrews says, there remains yet a rest for God's people. Some of us just want to enter into the rest of God now. Listen to me. I'm not saying we can't have moments and times where we rest in God's presence, but that is not the Christian walk. The Christian walk is about laboring with God. It's about standing against powers and principalities and rulers. It's about spiritual warfare. It's about advancing the kingdom in the hearts and lives of people. The Christian walk is work. And it's meant to be work, but Hebrews reminds us there remains yet a rest for God's people. And we will enter into that rest. It's called heaven. And thank God for that. But here on earth, we've got to work. There's things that are expected of us. So we want everything now, and we've got to learn to wait. Give with the view of eternity. Give with the view of what lies ahead, so that you can store up for yourself treasures in heaven. See, I hope for all of you, you get a lot of stuff here on earth. I hope you get houses and cars and promotions. I hope you have great resources. I hope you walk in God's financial favor. I'm going to pray a blessing of financial favor at the end of this series. I hope you all walk in that. But here's the other thing. Remember, none of that lasts. That's all temporal. What we take with us into eternity are the hearts and lives and the people that we touched and changed for God's kingdom. When you give, and it makes a difference for eternity, you're building up treasure for yourself. And that is worth it. And if you don't get those things, remember, there's a better place waiting for us. There's a better future. There's a better hope. There's a better rest. So you may not get any of those things, but remember, this is only temporary. It's not forever. I love how the writer of Colossians puts it. Let heaven fill your thoughts. Don't spend your time worrying about things down here. And the last thing is this, and we're going to end with this. Give with joy. Give with joy. You know, it seems incredible to me how often we give, and it's almost like, fine, I'll give. I don't want to. We give out of a sense of joylessness, obligation, well, I've got to do this. But Paul, in writing to the Christians in Corinth, says this, each of you must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Now, I know some people say, well, does that mean I need to tithe or not tithe? We're going to talk about tithing next week. But here's what I know part of what that means. Whatever you're going to give joyfully. Give cheerfully. When's the last time you gave and you just said, this is awesome. There's a joy in this. Boy, I'm writing out my tithe check. I am so excited. Baby, look how much we get to give. Wow. I've heard people say, man, it's hard. That's the biggest check I write each month. Where's the joy in that? The joy ought to be, wow, God has blessed us so much. This is incredible. We get to do this. Not I have to do this. I get to do this. I've been blessed so much that I can give more than I ever thought I could. Where's the joy? Seems like we give out of compulsion, out of obligation. We say here at Hickory Ridge, giving is an act of worship, and worship is giving. And giving ought to be joyful, but yet so often we don't see that joy. And I think most churches across America, we don't see that. So, do you want to be free from debt? Do you want to be free from debt? Here's what you need to do. You need to learn contentment. You need to learn contentment. I've got food and clothing. With that, I'll be content. And the next is this. Practice joyful generosity. Practice joyful generosity. The worship team's going to come up. And so here's what we're going to do this morning. You may have noticed we did not receive the offering. Some of you are saying, yeah, it was great. Well, let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. We're going to practice joyful generosity here right now this morning. Because it is something you have to practice. It doesn't come natural for most of us. But I'm telling you, if you practice it, if you learn to do it, you will find a joy in giving. You know who's got a great heart for that? It's my wife. She loves to give. She's delighted. She's like, oh, let's give to this and let's give to that. And I'm squashing her down saying, baby, no. But it's contagious, and I have learned. It's taken me almost 25 years, but I have learned, watching her, the joy of giving. There's times we give, and we'll give secretly. There's sometimes we'll just give right straight out to a person. But to see the expression of gratitude, the look on their face when they get something, man, it makes you want to give more. It makes you want to give more generously, more often, more frequently. There is a joy in giving, but we have to practice it. We have to learn it. So here's what we're going to do. In just a moment, the ushers are going to come and receive the offering. But we're going to practice being joyful. You've probably never done this in church before, but man, I am excited. I did this with the kids last week, and the kids were thrilled. And if the kids are more excited than you, we're the parents. We set the example. So you're going to learn this. And you're going to set an example for the kids. So I'm going to, in just a moment, don't come up yet, ushers. When I say the ushers come forward because it's time to give the offering, we're going to all say, hey, we're going to be excited. Clap, cheer, stand to your feet. Now, stand to your feet. I know some of you say, I hate when a pastor tells me to do something. I don't want to do it. Well, we're all going to look at you if you're sitting. Now, all right, we're ready. If the ushers would come forward, we're going to receive the offering. All right, ushers, stop. That was, go back. Now that was good, but I think we can do better, okay? Now, I just want to say, if you prepare yourself, if you're giving this morning, great. If not, and you've already given online, wonderful. You can give. There's other two ways to give. You can give online, you can text to give, but if you're giving here this morning, or listen, this is what you should do when you're at home. You give online, just, amen. Your kids will be like, what's happened? You say, I just gave to God. be excited, okay? So we're going to try it now, and then well, we're going to just be excited about giving, joyful. The ushers will come forward, and as they do, we are excited, and we're going to go right into worship, because giving is worship, and worship is giving. So if the ushers would come forward to receive the offering. Woo! Now let's worship God together.